So this is a basic tabular example of a cost curve, and it's something that we'll be looking at in terms of understanding the four market models. Very interesting stuff because you actually see how these fixed and variable costs translate into the actual cost structures that we're going to be using when we explain the four market models. Now, in some of my other videos, I actually have some graduate classes where I've gone through this, but I wanted to go through it for our undergraduate classes. So this comes right out of the text. And if you notice, we have a change in total product in the first form. And you'll be doing this and doing examples like this on the test. So you go from 0 to 10, and that's the increase in total product. And notice that at 0, and remember this from my last video, that at 0 production, all costs are fixed. So remember that. Make a note of that. When we are not producing anything, then all our costs are fixed. So for instance, on the examination or in a typical example, and remember, these are theoretical constructs, so you learn, it's not so much about the numbers that you're looking at, but almost like geometry when you do a proof. What we're trying to teach you here is to how to understand how a cost structure works. And this can apply to any company, and this can apply to trillion-dollar company as opposed to this small company. But the concept is what I want you to pick up. So notice that 0 production, the total cost is only $100. That means that is the fixed cost. So once again, whatever the cost is at 0, that total cost is the fixed cost. So we take that and it goes here. Notice 0, no variable cost. And we just write it down because fixed costs do not change. Fixed costs are costs like insurance, rent, any kind of regulatory payments, certain fixed employment payments. In a company, in any productive company, you're going to have fixed costs. So those are going to be the same no matter how much we produce. But notice how the variable costs do change. And when you subtract the total cost from the fixed cost, you'll get your variable cost. And here is the equation. Fixed plus variable equals total. You remember that from our last video. So 190 minus 100 is 90. For instance, 340 minus 100 is 240. Now you can solve for the variable cost because now you know the fixed cost. And you know the basic equation that fixed plus variable cost equal total costs. Once I have those numbers in tow, then I can go and get the average fixed cost. So the average fixed cost is going to be whatever the costs are divided by the production. So notice that 100 divided by 1 is 100, but as I keep producing more and more of a product, the average fixed cost is going to go down and continue to go down. And that's the beauty of growing a company. If you have fixed costs like rent or like accounting or like legal, for instance, such as legal or accounting, then as you produce more product or open up more scale, more businesses, as you grow your system, your fixed cost is going to constantly go down. Think about McDonald's, the beauty of McDonald's. They open up more and more McDonald's, but the cost of inventing the Big Mac, the cost of inventing certain methodologies, advertising, those costs get spread out over more and more product, and that means the fixed costs keep going down. But the variable cost is not the same thing. The variable cost changes with units of production. And if we notice in the law of diminishing marginal returns that we reviewed in the last unit, the variable cost will go down and then come up because we will save money for a while. And if you remember that from our marginal productivity model, and then it will raise. They will go down and then they will raise. And you'll always get that relationship of variable costs getting better as we hire more workers, like a fictional pizzeria owner who puts more employees on and drives down his costs because they're more efficient, up to a point when they become less efficient because you just don't have enough work or the ability for these additional employees to become more efficient, and that's when variable costs go up. And once they go up, they're not going to come down for hiring more people. So you get efficiency when you start adding product, and then you get disefficiencies when you move up. So you'll be going down, and then you'll be going up. Finally, when you add these two together, you're going to get a total cost relationship because total cost is the function of both of these costs. But again, while the fixed cost will drive down, the variable cost will continue to be the same, have that same structure of going down and then going up, the law of diminished marginal returns. And what we're going to see is that same pattern of us becoming more efficient and then going up and becoming less efficient. And that curve will track, the difference being the fixed cost. Finally, the most important thing, and we've talked about it in the past, is marginal costs. And marginal costs are the change in total costs as we change quantity. So as we notice, as we go from 190 to 135, the change will be it's the change in our total cost. Divided by as a function of each product. So as I go from 100 to 90, the marginal cost becomes 90. Then when I go from 190 to 270, it goes down to 80. Then from 270 to 340, 60. But notice, because of the variable cost, my marginal costs go down and then they trend up. And it's really important you understand that you have the law of diminishing returns so that the cost structure is such that we get a relationship. And I'm trying to identify that. We get a relationship where costs, the long-term costs they trend down and then trend up. Trend down and then trend up. So if you look at this over the long run, it's almost like the way a company like a McDonald's or a Walmart would look. They started to get these economies of scale or these benefits from growing, and then that continues over many, many stores and many, many units of production, and eventually we get a long-run average total cost curve, which explains economies and diseconomies of scale. As they start to trend down, then they begin to trend up. And you can notice that in the stock market, the way the stock market reacts to these companies. If you remember, or if I go back, Walmart did very well when it was first introduced, as they continue to grow stores and get all of these benefits from growth. But then at one point they get too big. Like for instance, I told you my story about Wendy's. Wendy's wanted to introduce blueberries with yogurt. It took years to do that because they needed to source the blueberries for so many different stores. Or McDonald's trying to get a breakfast sandwich or offer breakfast all day. That took years to do because there was so many different variables that had to be solved. Sanitation, delivery, the time constraints, making sure you had enough employees to handle all these things, training. So you start to see as you get bigger and bigger, you start to get this part of the curve, which is it takes longer and longer. I mean, if a small mom and pop deli wants to serve breakfast, they just have to put in a grill and maybe hire 1 or 2 workers. But if McDonald's wants to do it, this could become a huge process. And that's where you get diseconomies of scale. So this is definitely going to be on the test, and I want you to, and it's something you need to know. It's classic microeconomics. And what you start to see is the cost curves, fixed costs over these many units of production. And you always want to look at the graph formulas. They'll stay the same, but total variable cost and total cost will trend up. And the difference being the fixed cost, right? More to the point, we get this classic cost curve, which is average fixed costs go down, variable costs go down and then come up, and the total cost, since it's a function of both, will trend with the difference being fixed cost. And this is really important because every market model we're about to introduce will be affected and have these same cost structures. And again, in a basic macroeconomics exam, you will have to identify these cost structures, but they all relate back to this tabular form. So if you look at this and follow it down, you will see this basic relationship. Finally, and I think there may be one other, this is what our typical cost curve looks like. We have marginal costs that sort of look like the Nike swoosh that go down and go up. Average total cost will trend up. Average variable cost and average fixed cost will go down. So this is something not only will you have to identify on an examination, but you'll want to know that these cost structures exist no matter what your business is, whether it's perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, or monopoly, that the basic cost structures will exist. So if you want to review for this class and you want to understand it for any class, for any type of economics look at this trend, work out the numbers, and then relate it to these different curves. And notice that we have the law of diminished marginal utility. As we add more units of production, we get benefits, and then we lose. And that can also be exemplified with the long-term, this is the long-run average total cost curve, which looks the same, and it all relates back to a basic economic principle, the law of diminished marginal utility. So I want you to pay attention to that. I want you to spend some time. Notice we get economies of scale, like when McDonald's or Walmart were growing, or Starbucks. Then we get constant returns. Then eventually the company grows too big, and it gets a diseconomy of scale. And the long-run average total cost curve starts to look like that. Okay, we'll continue this, and in our next unit, we're going to be talking about the 4 basic market models. Thank you.